I think we owe it to ourselves to think about getting good knives, and I would give you permission. You have doctor's orders now to go home and tell your spouse, "Hun, I need some new knives." Of all the stuff you've spent money on, that's the cheapest thing you can do. I mean, you've spent thousands of dollars on everything else. Go spend hundreds of dollars and get you good sets of knives. Now, one of the things that is important on this is you always need to have, when we think about knife selection, you need knives that are big knives because you're cutting big pieces of meat. So you shouldn't be afraid of having a great big knife. Because you think about it, you're going across making cuts, and if you're making it with a small bladed knife, then you're having to do more cutting across, and you've got more chances for error and I think frustration on that. And so it's okay to own great big bladed knives. In fact, this one may even not be even big enough. We've got another one we've used back here that is, about like that, and it's got even a thicker blade on that.
How many inches that is?
I think this is a 10-inch knife is my guess on that one.
What brand is that?
Well, and these are both Forstners on that, and that would probably be the ones we would probably have used more around here. And I think even when you look like Cook's Illustrated, when they've done their stuff of knives, they always go back to Forstner.
What's the name of that style?
Well, I think this is just a, Rob, I need to probably look at that on it. It's not a scimitar, where they'll talk about one of those. I think that would just be like what's normally like a breaking knife, I think is what they have. But I can take a look and get even better descriptions of those. Yeah. I've learned about sharpness. I think it's important. And when they talk about definition of sharpness, it's really, sharp, something sharp where it's the juncture of two highly polished surfaces. That's the definition that all these guys, when they talk about woodworking sharpness, they talk about it's the place, the juncture of two highly polished surfaces. So the angle can be, they'll say, well, you can have a 90-degree angle and be sharp. Yeah, you've cut yourself before on something that's kind of like that. It just has more friction through that. Most of these bevels are probably going to be in the 30% bevel, and you got a bevel on both sides, whereas in woodworking, most of the time you're doing a bevel only on one side, then you've got a flat on the other. But here you're doing that. So a lot of times what we're doing, you're attempting to reestablish a bevel with the coarse stones, but then the rest of the time you need to be really working on trying to make that shiny, smooth through the fine stones and through any of the other type things. Now in meat, you almost always, in kind of anything else, you always have a steel. And the steel usually is what you're trying to do is line up kind of the final edges on that with that. If you ever see anybody that's kind of, hacking on that thing, they don't know what they're doing. And so, sometimes you'll see that kind of thing. Because really what you're doing, you're just trying to run that on both sides, hopefully on that bevel. And it should be an even number of passes, because that would be, left, right as you go through there on that. And so a lot of times what you'll see in a meat packing plant, or anybody that's doing any cutting, they'll have a sharp knife, and then this is kind of what you do to kind of keep the edge on there through the day. You'll kind of cut, and then you'll notice something, you'll stop, and then they'll kind of go through there and do that. If you ever do this, always put your thumb on this side over here, because if you get your thumb over here, you'll learn pretty quick that it will cut. And so the thumb's always back in here, and there's no reward for doing this fast. Sometimes when I do that, I'm kind of listening, I'm feeling to make sure that it's going okay.